Почему в балете так интенсивно, так как-то
Why does
страстно?
ballet create such concentration of the passions and intensification of emotions which exist in principle in life and other forms of theater? In the ballet theater, however, the passions strike with a particular force.
Потому что балетный...
Because in a ballet company, there is always a critical mass of younger people. Let's say the Bolshoi Theater has a staff of 250 people, including those who are on sickness and on maternity leaves. The core of the staff consists of the boys and girls under 28 to 30. By this age, the main group of younger artists leaves the theater, and only those who turn into soloists. Only those who found their personalities and their own individualities stay in companies with perspective of rising to higher positions. But the majority of the younger group is ready for anything. They beg for roles and ask not to be fired. In other theatrical genres, it is not possible to be boys and girls forever. One has to be a grown-up person to play in a symphony orchestra, for example. Those who work in the drama theater are established, fulfilled people as a rule. In contrast, ballet is always about boys and girls. And even when more mature people come to a ballet company, they still remain very subtle creatures, and they can be easily suppressed. And when some courageous people dare to express their opinions, they are quickly destroyed. This led to the current situation in which ballet as a form of art is destroyed. There are no longer real stars in ballet now. When public relations reign over reason, a great number of magazine covers say, "This is a great dancer, this is a genius. She is wearing a costume of this or that famous designer." But all these purported stars are still a far cry from Plisetskaya, Maximova, or Zakharova, because of one simple explanation. They gained their names, but not personalities. No one knows these stars, and no one will remember them. In my generation, dancers were discovered and cultivated from childhood. A seed should fall into good soil to grow.
What could you do?
Well, I still remember the world before internet, when, for example, people, let's say ballet lovers, were still arguing who danced the Swan Lake better, Ulanova or Plisetskaya, while both were no longer on the stage for 100 years, so to say. Could you just be happy that both Ulanova and Plisetskaya danced the Swan Lake? They danced the main role in this ballet differently, but each did it equally convincing. Nowadays, you cannot see people fighting over such matters.
Now that you have many young people under your tutelage in the Vaganova Academy, does it depend on you whether they become stars or not?
No, decisively no, due to one simple reason. The school is for learning and not for making a career. Careers are made in the theater, and a young dancer's success depends on the leadership of the theater in many ways. The crash of the ballet star system in the world emerged when a new generation of managers has decided that they have to receive more appreciation and laudatory than artists, and that they ought to be placed above the artists. What is their proper place? Their real function is to serve artists, and they misinterpret this function. Theaters exist for artists and the public, while the entrepreneur only facilitates this function. Such managers could put their names ahead on private theater, while in state theaters they are only a part of executive offices. But they want their own glory. They do not know how to sing, to play, or to dance, but they want to get their rewards. And because of that, they do not want to have another Maria Callas or Maria Gulagina. They would never be happy with Rudolf Nureyev or myself, because these artists have their own opinion as to what art is and should be. But for administrators and managers, these ideas are not acceptable.
Когда вы пришли в Большой театр,
When you arrived in the Bolshoi, you have heard a great line of Marina Semyonova. It's time to prepare for retirement. That was not just a passing line.
It was said by someone who already knew life well.
And what is dance and how does it work in dance?
I must make a footnote here. I heard Semyonova's saying about the plans for retirement when I was 18, while she was already 86. Do you see a time gap between us? She knew what she was talking about. I'm very grateful to her. She forced me to continue my studies. You know, when we received our diplomas in the school theater, I got a cum laude diploma because I studied well. And then, when I walked backstage, my mother took this diploma from my hands and gave it to someone else. This one happened to be the dean of the institute. Then, a graduate with a cum laude could have been admitted to the institute without exams. I was fighting with my mother at the moment because I did not want to study. When she died suddenly, her friends talked to me about completing my studies, as my mother wanted, as they thought that I would drop them. And then, Maria Timofeevna stepped in when she heard that Kolka was studying in the institute. She said, "What? Are you dropping the studies?" and forced me to complete them.
To complete.
Not just to finish, but she put me next to her in the process. When we attended in the Academy of Choreography, she was in the jury for the exams. She liked me for many different reasons. I was a sort of orphan, her favorite pet. I was talented, gifted kid. In a way, she rooted for me. She told to Sofia Golovkina, who was in charge of the Academy of Choreography, "Sonia, I know that Kolya studies with you in the institute. Could I supervise his professional orientation?" "Yes, of course," Golovkina replied. Semyonova then asked her to disregard if I was not attending regular courses. I thought to myself, great, Marina Timofeevna almost got a diploma for me without much effort. I would just come in and collect it. I was already kind of famous dancer then. But then, a real hell started. She demanded my presence at all rehearsals. She had never left me alone. For example, she was working with a student on a variation and simultaneously taught me how to teach this variation.
So you were her assistant?
Not her assistant. I was her punching bag. I had to know everything, and I had to do everything. And every time I think about this moment, I thank my mother for forcing me into studies, and Marina Timofeevna for getting me immersed in my profession. When I was appointed rector of the Vaganova Academy, I had certain difficulties to start with. I was not from Petersburg. It is true that the two cities do not like each other, especially the ballet people. At the first meeting, regarding teaching methods, there were many respectful specialists who were indeed Vaganova students. But when we talked about methodology, they understood that I knew what I was talking about. But in contrast to them, I was not just a methodology nerd, but a practicing artist.
So you received all that knowledge directly from Semyonova, Vaganova's favorite student?
Not just any favorite student, but the closest, the most important. In Vaganova's will, Marina Timofeevna was written as number one. Only after Marina Timofeevna came Vaganova's family, and then Natalia Dudinskaya, another favorite student of Vaganova. I understand what treasure Marina Timofeevna had passed to me, as if she foresaw my future. She used to repeat, "You are from Leningrad."
As far as schools are concerned, Semyonova had a strong Leningrad-Petersburg upbringing, but she carried a Moscow accent in dance as well.
Yes, you know that Galina Ulanova addressed these issues in her book. I'm talking about a collection of interviews given by Ulanova, which were assembled by Sanya Davlekamova. Ulanova moved to Moscow in 1943 and became a principal of the Bolshoi in 1944. She was 34 then. She was already a mature dancer. In these interviews, she describes how she moved to Moscow and how she began to dance on the stage of the Bolshoi. For some time, she returned to the Mariinsky to dance certain performances. The decorations that were made for a particular stage, for example, for the Bolshoi, had to be compressed in the Mariinsky. Ulanova had to dance on both stages the roles that were made specifically for her, such as Juliet, Giselle, and Maria from the Fountain of Bakhchisarai. She understood that she had to change or adjust certain details to the stage of Bolshoi. For example, any gesture on the stage of the Bolshoi should be larger to reach the audience. And she began to change details. She put her scenic makeup on differently, because it should be more pronounced, stronger, because the light comes to the stage differently, because the space is 4 times bigger, because the stage box is huge. It could not but change the style of dancing as well. Even Les Sylphides, a chamber-style ballet, looks differently on the stage of the Bolshoi. Take, for example, that famous mazurka that Ulanova danced at her graduation and danced thereafter on the stage of the Mariinsky and the Bolshoi. In the mazurka, Ulanova had to run from a wing to downstage to the same musical phrase in the Bolshoi, and in the Mariinsky, but 2 different stages required a different number of steps and musicality, as the space is twice as big in the Bolshoi. And although this prelude is considered to be a lighter variation, because it does not have too many pirouettes, the version of the Bolshoi required a much greater physicality, as it forced the ballerina to run from one corner to another much faster.
So you're talking about the practical side of things.
Yes, but classical dance has a practical side of things above all.
Certainly, but there is also the sense of style, the St. Petersburg sense of style.
Yes, and a style is often determined by space in some ways. What if you have only 4 counts of music, and you still have to make 4 steps instead of 8 to this music? Of course, you make your steps bigger in this case, and it changes the style.
What did you feel yourself when you came to work to St. Petersburg?
Not much, because I still live in Moscow, but work in St. Petersburg. And I think I would feel no differently in the future. Not because I did not get along with the city. I love St. Petersburg. I like walking in the city freely. But I cannot allow myself that. I have no time. I come to the Vaganova Academy at 9 a.m. and I leave at 8:30 in the evening. Where could I go after? I often joke that I am a prisoner of the Rossi Castle, but my imprisonment is not so uncomfortable, and its location is really great. You know, you should not wait until someone appreciates you. Appreciation often comes thereafter. I told you already, I like history. To read something and to compare this opinion with that opinion, I know well the history of dance. At times, too well. No one was appreciated too much. Only after there were regrets and a creation of a legend.
In the meantime, the Vaganova Academy produces future soloists, stars, and premier dancers every year. What kind of advice would you give them?
To run away.
Where to?
I would not like to graduate at this time, and I told that to the kids honestly. You know, I observed some sad footage this year. A TV channel, Kultura, broadcasted the opening of the season in the Bolshoi. It was sad to watch. My students were at the ceremony. This is why I had watched the program. The thing is, the day of my inauguration as a dancer to the Bolshoi, and I remember that day clearly, was one of the happiest days for me. It was the 26th of August of 1992. The country was just ruined, and we had many hopes.
The USSR fell.
Yes, and then we, just the youngsters, dressed very modestly because we did not have much, stood in a row while waiting to be introduced. And then I remember I saw Leventhal, Grigorovich, Sinyavskaya, Obraztsova, Sotkilava, Pakrovsky, Rudenko, and Pavlova and Siminyaka. All these big stars of Soviet opera and ballet walked down the passage. Every person then was a true, unmatchable star. And now, while I watched the ceremony at my home theater, my alma mater, I could recognize only 3 faces that had an immediate relationship to the Bolshoi theater. It was truly sad. I could not escape a question besieging my mind. Who are these people in the Bolshoi? I am not negative about it. I just simply say that I came to the theater when Ulanova and Semyonova, the true stars, We're still walking down the aisles, and this is no longer the case.
But this is the past. They are not with us now.
Yes, they are gone, but the change has to be prepared. Someone had to think about the transmission of status in advance.
And returning to the question about younger dancers and your immediate answer, to run away. To run away where?
I don't know. I think that every young dancer should find his or her own way. He or she should come to an agreement with oneself. And it should be a personal decision. Why do I not give them specific advice? If a student comes to me and informs that he or she wished to be auditioned in this or that theater, I would call this theater and ask when they have auditioning times. But if a student comes to me with a question, I was invited to this and that theater, where should I go? Then the question is not addressed to me, in my view. That is one's own responsibility to decide. To the students who were closer to me, I explain what kind of joys or troubles they might expect in this or that theater, but that's about it. My obligation is to educate them, but not more.
Если бы вас сейчас спросили, самый...
This is the 5th year of your work in the Vaganova Academy already. If one asked you about some happy moments in the academy, what would you say now?
In regard to the school?
Yes.
When my students dance, I dance with them. And if one of them does something well, my heart warms up. And if something is not going well, I feel my responsibility directly. My heart aches because I feel that this is my fault. That it was I who did not push far enough, and that I did not give them enough. I have a very special attitude towards happiness. When I was a student, my biggest dream was to dance the prince in the Nutcracker. It was my desire since I was 10, and it happened that the ballerina who danced Masha, when I saw the performance at 10, became my Masha 10 years later. It was Natasha Arkhipova, a stunning ballerina and one of my favorite people in the world. When we were swinging in the boat, as a stage set required, at the beginning of the second act, I told her, I fulfilled my dream. I could wish for no more. I did not think yet about more difficult dances to come. I was still in euphoria. The curtain was still not up when she told me, Kolechka, the more you expose to dancing, the more your appetite grows. Everything is relative.